today we're going to be coloring the flowers from the Blooming Bees page that we are working on completing this beautiful grayscale coloring book. And I'm going to start off with these 3 flowers down here, and then I'm going to continue up here and then finish with the leaves. Today I'll be using the Ohuhu brush tip alcohol markers along with colored pencils. I am using a combination of the Amazon Basics colored pencils, and depending on what colors I do need, I will also be using Color and Stadler colored pencils as well. And I'll also be using the Jussard acrylic brush tip markers to add in some details. So let's get into it. I'm going to lay the base down with the alcohol markers, and I will be using the brush tip to apply the marker, and I'm not going to be making it opaque. I am going to make it uneven. I want it to have a watercolor kind of feel with the alcohol markers. So let's go. Now I'm going to do the centers with the Ohuhu brush tip in GY7. I want a kind of a greeny color in the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and add that alcohol marker in now. I do like to use circles when I am coloring the flower centers, just so I'm hitting all of those little bumps. I don't know what to call them. Now I'm going to be taking that colored pencil that I mentioned earlier, and I am going to be adding in some shading, and I will be following the shadows of the book where the grayscale is a little bit darker, and also anywhere that there is an overlap. So the bee I want to be standing out, so I will be adding a shadow in behind the bee's body and along the legs. So here we go. I'm actually going to use 2 colors. I've decided to also use, as well as this blue gray, I am going to use a dark gray as well, just to add in a little extra depth. So we're just going to repeat that process with the other flowers as well. And then I will be going in with a lighter colored pencil to add in those highlights. going to begin the highlights with the yellow colored pencil, and I'm going to essentially go opposite to where those shadows are. I'm not going to cover the blue completely, but I do want to pull some of that yellow down into the petal, just to make it look more natural. I'm going to take that white and I'm going to go along the very edges and also pull down some of that white into the petal as well. I'm actually going to use that same yellow to go in and highlight the centers. And all I'm going to do is use that circular motion again, and I'm not hitting each of those tiny stamens. I'm just really adding a little bit of a different color to give it some texture. And you can even go in with another color, such as, why don't we try a nice purple or magenta? And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use small circles and just go in a few spots just to add a little bit of color and dimension. Think about nature's all different colors. And you can have fun deciding what you want to use. And now, let's see, should I add a little white on top? Sure. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of white, using that same kind of technique where I'm just kind of adding a little bit of that color over top. Now I'm going to use that dark gray again. And I'm going to shade on the bottom semicircle of that flower center. So I want it to look like it's three-dimensional. So the shadow is going to be along this side here. So I'm just adding some gentle shading. So I do like to go around the bottom. And I am using that semicircle to give it that rounded look. Now comes the fun part. We are going to blend everything together, blending all of that colored pencil together. The blending stumps, whoops, I have it upside down. The blending stumps will only work on your colored pencil on the page. It doesn't do anything for the alcohol marker that you use to lay down the base, but it will smudge that colored pencil. So let's get this all nice and smooth. And again, just using that circular motion. So I'm using the Just Art acrylic marker in the brush tip, and I'm just going to go in some of the top ones especially. So I want it to be brighter on the top rounded half. So think about the opposite to what you've done at the bottom. You want to add in some nice little highlights along the top. So your highlights are essentially opposite to wherever your shadows are, essentially. And let's add a tiny bit of white. Lovely. This is where we're going to be adding some detail to make it look like the wing is over top of the flower here. I'm just going to pat some color in unevenly. I don't want it to be too opaque underneath that wing. And I'll continue here. For the flowers at the top, I am going to use this same bright blue that I used here, but I want the tips to be really, really light. So I'm actually going to use a colorless blender to put down some, just to put down some of that alcohol to get that image nice and wet. And then I'm going to go over top with this nice bright blue, and I'm going to feather the color into that wet colorless blender. going to go in again with the colorless blender and just feather it into that blue just to soften those lines a tiny bit. And repeat. For the shading, I'm going to use that dark gray again and a white colored pencil to add in the highlights. I do want this to stay quite bright white, but I may add in a tiny bit of blue colored pencil just to blend out some of those lines a little bit. That might be quite nice. If you're finding that the color that you've added underneath that wing is a little too stark or bright, I just add a tiny bit of that white colored pencil over top to soften it up. And I'm going to go in with the pale blue colored pencil just to soften up those lines, but really focusing on keeping the tips of these petals nice and white. And if you like, you can go back in with the white colored pencil and almost go in the opposite direction. So starting at the tips and going into that blue color. I'll be going in now with an emerald green over top of the leaves and adding in some shadows. Again, we're going to go in with that smudging tool and soften up all those lines. So I will be doing the flowers as well that I did not blend earlier, and as well as the leaves. I will be adding details with the Art acrylic brush tip markers, and I'm just going to be adding some little dots here and there just to give it a little bit of whimsy. And there we are. I did make a couple little boo-boos, but overall, I think it turned out really nice. I like the blue flowers. I like how subtle they are, and I do really like these flowers at the top. I love the white. I love the white tips. So that might be something that I try again in the future. But I do actually want to do the background, and I think I might do it a dark color. I haven't quite decided. So stay tuned. Let me know what part of this picture you like the best, and if you've tried coloring with a grayscale coloring book. If you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe and share this with anyone that is looking for a little bit more of a challenge and some tips and tricks on how to color these beautiful intermediate grayscale books. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.